Hey, welcome back. This video is all about geometric shapes. So first of all, we have already drawn a rectangle to the sketch window in the last video, right? So here is a rectangle which is positioned by the mouse position. This is the rect function which draws this rectangle. So this function is reliable for the display of the rectangle on the sketch window. So what you see here between these parentheses are the arguments that we put into the rect function. And these arguments tell the rect function how to behave. So mouse X and mouse Y are representing the mouse position, and 100 and 100 are representing the dimensions of the rectangle. So this is the X position, this is the Y position, this is the width, and this is the height. What if we want to draw an ellipse instead of a rectangle? Well, we can do so by just changing the word of the function to ellipse, because the ellipse function also exists in the processing API, and we can use that to draw ellipses. The ellipse function takes the same arguments, so the same values we put into the parentheses here, just like the rect function. So the syntax is the same, okay? And now we could think about the styling of the ellipse. Maybe we don't want to have a white ellipse. We want to have a black ellipse, for example. So we can fill the ellipse with the fill function. The fill function expects a color value, and 0 in this case is representing the blackest black you can get on the screen. So now we've got a black ellipse here. The cool thing is that we also can manipulate the stroke of this ellipse. So a border that is displayed around the geometric shape. And we can use the stroke function for that. So stroke, let's set this to 255, which represents the brightest white you can get in processing. And there we go. The problem is that the stroke is very thin, so we can manipulate the thickness of the stroke with the stroke weight function. Note that the W has to be uppercase here. So now we've got a 20 pixels stroke around the ellipse. Sometimes we don't want to have a fill, or we don't want to have a stroke. And we can deactivate both with specific functions. For example, if we want to deactivate the fill, we can use no fill. And note again, here the F is uppercase. There we go. Now we've got just this ellipse without a fill, right? So it's transparent in the middle. So we also can deactivate the stroke by using the no stroke function. Let me delete these functions here and fill the center of the stroke, the center of the ellipse black. And now I have a black ellipse without a stroke. That's it, right? So these functions are very important. All right, that's quite cool. We've got a black ellipse on a gray background, but very, very soon we will start to draw more complex sketches with various shapes with different stylings. So how can we get different shapes onto the screen with different stylings? To understand how that works, it makes sense to think about how a processing sketch or how processing reads the code in your editor. It reads the code line by line, just like a human reading a book. So it goes through every line, it tries to understand what you want to display, and if the code has no errors or bugs, it's going to execute it and display it on a sketch window. All that happens very, very fast, 30 times a second. So the draw loop runs continuously from top to bottom, reads the code, paints the picture, reads the code, paints the picture, and so on. So that's why it is called draw loop, right? And we are going to talk about loops later on. Now, this is the key to understand how we can draw multiple shapes to the sketch window. Because if we want to have, multiple shapes with different stylings, we have to understand that the code is read from top to bottom. Because now we can take this piece of code here, paste it down here, And let's say the ellipse should be in the middle of the sketch. And if I change the fill color to white, and by the way, let me just deactivate the stroke at all because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make our sketch prettier at all. It just looks bad because thin strokes are ugly. Now you can see that we've got two different shapes on the screen and both have a different fill. Why is that? And why is it that the black ellipse is under the white one? Can you see that? When I just hover the mouse over the white ellipse, you can see that it is under the white ellipse. So the reason for that is that the code that draws the white ellipse comes after the code that draws the black ellipse. So the order of our lines of code has a direct influence onto the order that is displayed on the sketch window. So things that are more at the bottom of the code are displayed on top of things in the sketch window. It's a little bit difficult to understand, but let me take this piece of code, cut it out and put it in front of that piece of code. So now the white ellipse is drawn before the black ellipse, right? Now the black ellipse overlaps the white ellipse, right? That's how it works. So we always have to think about how our code is read from top to bottom. Processing goes through every line of code and just executes our commands line by line. Great! In the next video, we are going to talk about triangles and lines. See you then.